Okay. So there are three types of tables. Snowflake supports three types of tables. One is permanent tables, and the second one is transient tables, and other is temporary tables. So let's have a deep look into what are these tables. Okay. So the permanent tables. So whatever we work till day, they are all permanent tables. Okay. So by default, a table is permanent in Snowflake, default table type. That means whenever you are creating some table, and if you are not giving any additional keyword like transient or temporary, then that is called a permanent table. Okay. These are the regular and common tables we work on. Okay. And these tables exist until we drop them explicitly. So this table present in the database are these tables presence in the database until we drop them explicitly. So if you put a drop table command, then only the table will be dropped. Otherwise, the table will stay permanent in the database. Okay. And time travel retention period is 0 to 90 days, depends upon the Snowflake edition. So in the last session we discussed, right, for enterprise edition and a higher editions, it is 0 to 90 days. For standard edition, that is 1 day time travel period. So for all permanent tables, this is very important. Okay, every interview will get a question on this. Time travel retention period for permanent tables is 0 to 90 days. Okay, and the fail safe period is 7 days. Okay, and if you want to change, okay, from 0 to 90, you can change it to any value, 1, 5, 10, 30, 60. You can change to any value. Okay, but the period is 0 to 90 days, and default, whenever you create some table, the default is 1. If you want to change it, you can change it. Okay, and it supports 7 days of a fail safe period. So once the time travel period is over, the data will go into fail safe zone. There the data will be available for next 7 days. Okay, and how can you create a permanent table? Okay, create table name. As of today, we are doing this one only, right? Whenever we want to create a table, we are applying this syntax: create table name, and we are putting the metadata. Okay, the fields and the data types. So this is about permanent tables. So I'm not spending more time here because these are all days we are working with permanent tables only. And let's have a look into transient tables. What are the transient tables? So transient tables are similar to permanent tables, but the retention period for this is just 1 day. Okay. So they are very similar to permanent tables. They will stay in the database until we drop them. But the retention period for these tables, transient tables, is just 1 day. So after 1 day, you cannot bring back the data from transient tables. And there will be no fail-safe period for transient tables. So just 1 day time travel period. After 1 day, so you cannot get the data by using any way. Okay. So these tables exist until we drop them explicitly. So the tables will present, but if you do some deletion or modification of some data, we cannot fetch that historical data after 1 day. Okay, but the table structure will present permanently in the database. Okay, until we drop them explicitly. So you may get a doubt. So what is the use of these transient tables when you are reducing the retention period? Okay, so these transient tables are useful when there is no data protection required. Suppose there will be some intermediate tables, or there will be some temporary tables, like for your operations, for your development work, you may be creating multiple tables. So if you create them as a permanent table, what will happen? Even though there is no no specific reason for the table, or when there is no need of the table, still it will apply 90 days time travel period or whatever we defined at the database level. Suppose in your database you have defined 30 days 30 days retention period, and you have created a table for your development purpose. Even though the table is not important, okay, and it will take a 30 days retention period. So it's a waste of money, right? It's waste of there will be so much cost associated with time travel. Okay, that's why in that case, what you can do for your all your temporary work, all your this one development work, all your intermediate data storing, what you can do, you can create your tables as transient. Okay, and as well as there is one more use case. defining stage tables as transient tables is the best practice. So what not every organizations, but some organizations, what they do, they create their stage tables as a transient tables. Because stage tables, what we do, we just get the data from external stages or internal stages and load it into stages. From there, will process the data and store it into the main tables, right? So even though you delete some data from stage tables, nothing will happen because the files are available either in the external stage or internal stage. Again, if you realize you need that data, you can just use your copy command and get the data from those internal stages or external stages. So here the data security is not important. That means time travel period of 30 days, 60 days, 90 days is not required. Even though you lose some data from stage tables, nothing will happen. So you can create your stage tables as transient. And the syntax to create transient table is create transient table name. So in between create table, so you can mention like create or replace. Create or replace, just you have to use the keyword transient. Create or replace transient table and your table name. So if you, whenever you create a table like this, definitely the retention period will come as 1 day for that table, and there will be no fail-safe period for these tables. Okay. Any doubts here? We'll see this practically. Okay. So, and what is the other type? Temporary tables. Okay. So what are the temporary tables? So here, whenever you create a table with a temporary keyword, the table exists only within that session. That means whenever you close that session or whenever you log out from that Snowflake session, the table will not present. The table will get dropped automatically. So once the session ends, okay, the table gets completely dropped and it is not recoverable by any case. Okay. So these temporary tables are not visible to other users or session. Suppose I have a Snowflake account with multiple users. So there are multiple developers, multiple testers, right? So and I'm Janardhan. I'm a user of this Snowflake account, and I'm creating one table. So this table will not be accessed by any other people because my session is different and their session is different, right? So they cannot use that they cannot use the table, they cannot access the table, and even the sessions. So I can maintain multiple sessions. That means I can maintain multiple worksheets. Okay, in my web UI I can maintain multiple worksheets. So whatever the table you are creating in the one worksheet, you cannot access in the other worksheet. Okay, because that is different session. Okay, and they support 1 day retention period. So if you are that too, if your session is active for 24 hours completely, okay, you can get that table back within 1 day. If you do some if you delete the table by mistake, you can still get it. You can drop the table by mistake, but your session is active for 24 hours, you can get that back, and there will be no fail-safe period for this. Okay, and you may get a question, so what is the use of temporary tables? Okay, these are useful for your development work. Suppose one day you are working on some code changes and you want to store the data temporarily just within that session. In that case, instead of defining a table as permanent or transient, you can create the table as a temporary table. Okay, this is one use case. And the second use case, this is the very important. So when we use temporary tables, so whenever we are creating some stored procedures, okay, in that case uh, we use some tables for intermediate data processing, right? Suppose I have some 1,000 lines of stored procedure, 1,000 lines of SQL code. In between, I have to do many operations. Okay, I have to I have to do many transformations. So during that process, I have a need to store the data, some part of data in a table temporarily. Okay, in that case, what we do, instead of creating transient table or permanent table, so I can simply create a temporary table, and when the system is done with the execution of that stored procedure, those tables will get dropped automatically. So there will be no storage cost for those tables. Okay, so this is one of the main use case of temporary tables where we create them. So we create them mainly in the stored procedures for intermediate data processing or intermediate data storing. Okay. And the syntax to create, sorry, this is temporary table. I'll change it. Syntax to create a temporary table is create temporary table table name. Okay. Any doubts in transient tables or temporary tables? Let's go to next slide. Okay. So points to remember. So some of the key points to remember while working with the temporary tables or transient tables. We cannot convert any type of table to other type. I cannot convert any type of table. I cannot convert temporary table to permanent. I cannot convert temporary table to transient. So those conversions are not possible. Okay. And we can create transient databases and transient schemas also. So not only the tables, even the databases and the schemas also we can create as transient, but you cannot create a temporary database or temporary schema. Okay, that doesn't make sense, right? So we can create transient databases and transient schemas. Tables created under transient database or schemas are by default transient. Suppose you have created a schema, okay, that is transient schema, and if you are creating a table inside that and under that schema, definitely the table will come as a transient table. Okay, and if you are creating, you have created one transient database, and if you are creating any schemas or tables inside that database, definitely they are transient. Okay, by default they are transient. Okay, we can create a temporary table with same name as permanent table or transient table. This is also an important question you may get in interviews. Suppose I have a permanent table and I'm creating another table and creating a temporary table with same name as permanent table. First they'll ask you, is it possible to create tables like this? Okay, so yes, it is possible. You can say yes, it is possible. We can create a temporary table with same name as permanent or transient table. Okay, then you will get another question. Suppose if I write a query on the table, so from which table the data will be fetched, from the temporary table or from the uh, permanent table? So in that session, so in the session where you are working currently, so if you fetch the data from the table, data will be fetched from temporary table and not from the permanent table. But once your session ends, okay, there will be no temporary table. It gets dropped automatically. And next time, whenever you fetch the data, it will come from the permanent table only. So finally, we can create a temporary table with same name as permanent table or transient table. And if we query with that table name, it fetches data from temporary table in that session only. Okay. And how to find the table type? This is very important. So as of today, we have created many tables. And have you noticed anywhere it is a transient table, it is a temporary table, or it is a permanent table? Have you noticed anywhere? No, right? Because it was there, but we did not notice it. Okay. So whenever you just run this query, show tables, so there will be some set of columns, right? So in that there will be a column with the name kind. Okay. This kind will give us it's a permanent table or a transient table or temporary table. Okay. So this is how we can identify a table is a which kind of table, which type of table. So these are all the points we have to remember, and you will get interview questions on this slide only, especially. So you may get questions. Can you create a transient tables, transient databases and schemas? Yes, you can. If you create any schema as database as transient, definitely the objects you are going to create under that transient database will be by default transient only. Okay. And you cannot create a permanent table under transient database or transient schema. We'll see that in practice how we can do that. Okay, these are the important points to remember. And you can just simply remember this table. It will give you all the picture. Okay, so what is the table type? The persistence, that means how the data till what point of time the table exists or data exists, okay, and the time travel retention period for each type of table, and the fail safe period. So for temporary tables, until the session is active, the table will exist. After your session closes, the table will get dropped. Okay, and the time travel period for this is 0 or 1. By default 1, and you can set it to 0 if you want. And failsafe, there will be no failsafe for these temporary tables. The same for transient tables, their persistence is until you explicitly drop the table that presents in the database. Okay, and time travel for this is again 0 or 1. By default is 1, you can set it to 0 if you want, and there will be no failsafe for transient tables as well. And for permanent tables, for permanent tables, it depends on the edition we are choosing. So if we are working with the standard edition, then the time travel period is just 0 or just 1 day, and failsafe is 7 days. But for the permanent tables, when in the enterprise and higher versions, higher editions, it is like 0 to 90 days. By default, it will come as 1, and it can be modified to any value. So 1 to 90 days, you can set any value. Okay. Uh, so the failsafe period for this is 7 days. So you just remember this table. Okay. It will give all the differences between each type. So until when the table present in the database, what is the time travel, what is the failsafe. Okay. So this is about table types, and we can quickly execute. So first of all, where to see the table type? So I was saying, right, where we can see the table type. It is a permanent or transient or temporary, where we can see that. Suppose I'm just executing this show tables command. Show tables in the schema public. Okay. Show tables in schema public. Okay. I haven't chosen my database here. Okay. So whenever I run this show tables in the schema, it is giving me these tables. And if you see, there is a column with kind. Okay. So if you see, all are tables only. That means all are permanent tables only. Because as of today, we haven't created any transient table or temporary table. That's why for all tables, it is showing as simply table. Now let's try to create two tables. One is transient table and one is temporary table. Some basic tables. I'm not giving any field names here. Uh, just I'm creating the tables with one field each. So the syntax is create or replace transient table and the table name. Okay. And like the way create or replace temporary table, and this is the name I'm giving. Let's run both of them. Okay. Transient table created, temporary table created, and let's see. Let's run the show tables command again. So now if you see here, okay, these are all permanent tables, and if you see whatever we just created, okay, so this is a temporary table and this is a transient table. Okay, the names also I am given like this: tran table, temp table, tran table, and temp table. And you can see the database, the table type here. It's a transient or temporary. Okay, understood, right? Very simple. And we'll now try to work with transient tables, because these are all days we are working with permanent tables, right? So you know what is a permanent table, how to create, how to drop, how to alter, how to insert the data, how to delete the data, everything you know. So let's go to transient tables. Okay, first of all, I am trying to create one transient schema. Okay, create or replace transient schema, and this is my transient schema name. Okay, so I just created one schema name and schema got created. Let's see here. So if you see here, one schema name, transient schema. Okay. Okay. There are no tables inside that schema now. I want to see the kind of the schema. So I can execute a command like this: show schemas in database and my database name. So my database name is my own DB. It will display all the schemas present in the database. Okay. So these are all the schemas present now. And when it comes to your this one transient schema, just now we have created this. And if you see the options here, so to look at the schema level, you have to look at the options. So here it is saying transient schema. Okay, so that's how you can identify your schema as a transient or this one. Okay, and now I want to create one table, okay, under this schema. Now if you see here, I'm not using create or replace transient table. I'm just using create or replace table, but I'm creating under transient schema. So now what will happen? So it will be created as a permanent table or transient table. Okay, so I'm not using transient keyword here. I'm just using create or replace table and the table name. Okay, but I'm creating this table under transient schema. So now what will happen?
Transient, maybe.
Transient table.
Yeah,
Transient table.
so I clearly told, right? So whatever the table you are creating inside that under that schema, they'll be by default transient. So if you see here, we even though we are not specifying the transient keyword, but we are creating the table under transient schema. So by default, this is a transient, and you cannot create a permanent table here. Okay, okay, understood. So and can we alter retention period for transient tables? I told, right? So the retention period is 0 to 1 day only for all transient and temporary tables. Let's try to set it to 2. Okay. Alter table, alter table, my transient table name, set data retention time in days equals to 2. So what it is saying, it's a invalid value 2 for parameter data retention period in days. Why it is saying? Because this is a transient table and it supports maximum 1 day of time travel. So you cannot put more retention period, more than 1 day. Okay. And we can store transient tables within 24 hours. Okay. Suppose just I want to show you time travel, how it works. Okay, so this is my transient table I just now created under transient schema. So let's drop this table. So the table is dropped. Just try to see show tables in the schema, transient schema, and if you see there is no table here because we just dropped it. But we are in the 24 hours period, right? So I can do undrop of this table. How we can restore the tables in by using time travel? So we have to use undrop command. So undrop table, and what is the table name I have given? I have dropped transient table 1. So let's try to execute this. So I'm able to execute this, and let's see. So the table is back. So because we used undrop and the table is back, that means, so even though we are creating the tables, it is supporting time travel, but within 24 hours only we can do this. After 24 hours, you cannot bring that back this table. Okay, even though you are not specifying the time travel period anywhere, but by default it is 1 day. That means 24 hours. So within 24 hours, you can fetch the historical data from this table, or you can bring back the table completely. Okay. So here the lab part will be very less. You just have to understand the concept here. Okay. Suppose the temporary tables. Okay, how to work with the temporary tables? Let's see. Okay, so I'm creating a schema in the. I just I'm just trying to create a schema. Okay, with the temporary keyword. Is it possible? So can we create a temporary schemas or database? No. Let's try to execute this. Okay, so unsupported feature temporary schema. Okay, so you cannot create temporary schemas or temporary database, but you can create temporary tables. Okay, now I am creating one temporary table. Create or replace temporary table inside my public schema. Okay, with the name as temp table 2. Okay, so just execute this. So table has been created. Okay, and in the table I have given only one field, name and the data type is string. So let's try to insert some data. Okay, I'm inserting 3 records, Ravi, Gopal and Harsha. Okay, and let's try to run this here. So I'm able to fetch the data. Okay, from this tables. From this table I am fetched to fetch this data. Now try to run the same query in another session. Okay, I'm just copying this command, and this is my current session, and I have one more session here, one more worksheet. So I'm just copying command here. Okay, so if you see here, it is saying SQL compilation error, and the table does not exist. So this is one more session, but your temporary table active in only this session. Okay, understood, right? So one point I told while explaining the table types. So where is that? They are not visible to other users or other sessions. Suppose this is my Snowflake account, right? So this is my account. Under this account, I have some 10 users or 20 users. Okay. So none of the user can see this temporary tables, what I'm going to create. Okay. And even within the next worksheet and next session also, I'm not able to fetch this temporary table. Okay. So if you execute that here, select star from this table, it will give you the data. But if you execute the same statement in the other worksheet, it cannot. Okay. So the tables, temporary tables exist only in the current session. Okay. Now recreate this table and check the data. Okay. I am just trying to create or replace this table. Okay. The same table I am creating. Okay. Let's try. So the table has been replaced. Okay, now if you try to get the data, you will not get, because what is replace means it will drop the data and it will recreate the table, but it will not reinsert the data, right? You're understanding, right? Why I'm doing this, I'll explain in the next query. Okay, understanding, right? So I'm just trying to create or replace temporary table. Okay, with the same name, I have created. If you see here, okay, there is no data. I just dropped and recreated, but I haven't inserted this data. So this is one important question. So what will happen? Not only the temporary tables, but just I'm explaining here. Not only temporary tables, anywhere. This is very important. So I had one object yesterday, and I deleted that object. Okay, and I have created another object with the same name today. So if I want to execute undrop. Okay, suppose this table was there some 2 minutes back, but I have replaced the table, recreated the table. Now, if I do undrop table, what will happen? I want to fetch the data which was present some 2 minutes back in the table. So can I do this? Can I undrop? So it is saying object temporary table already exists. That means you cannot undrop, because you have dropped the table and you have created the table with the same name. So you cannot fetch the data from older table. So in that case, how to handle? I want to get the those 3 records, whatever I deleted. So you may get a question like this. Okay, you had some table yesterday, and by mistake you have deleted the table today and created another table with the same name. Now I want to get the data from yesterday's table. How can you get? Okay. Further, the solution is, so today we have created this table, right? So I'm not dropping this table, but I'm just renaming it to another table. Alter table. How to rename? Alter table, table name, and rename to this one. Rename to temp table 3 I'm giving. Okay. Just execute this. Okay. Okay, understood, right? So I just renamed it to temp table 3. If you want to see, you can see here. Okay, public temp table 3 came. Okay, and if you see, there is no data in the temp table 3 because we haven't inserted. Now try to execute undrop table 2. Okay, so now this time your table successfully restored. Okay, now try to execute this query. Select star from temp table 2. So you have all the 3 rows here. Okay, this is not only the concept with temporary tables, even though you can work with the permanent tables also. Whenever you drop and create a object with the same name, how to fetch the data from yesterday's table or previous copy. So how you have to answer, like, so I have to rename my current table to another name, and I have to execute undrop table command, so it will get the data, the deleted table data. Okay. Now we'll see one last scenario. So where I explained, right, we can create a create a table with same name as permanent table. So this is employee data we have. If you see here in the left pane, I have employee data with some 297 rows. I have this table. Okay, now I'm trying to create this table. Okay, create temporary table, my own db public employee data, same table with a different structure. In the actual employee table, I have so much data. I have so many fields like id, first name, last name, but I'm creating this table with only one field, that is id. Okay, so I have created that. Okay, and I'm inserting some data into the table. Insert into this table values of 20, 47, 35. I'm inserting some random values. Okay, so now that execution is completed, data got inserted. Let's see. Okay, so what is happening when I'm trying to select the data? It is giving me these three details, 3 rows. And if you observe, sorry, if you observe, even though we have 2 tables with this name, okay, let's try to execute show command. Show tables in schema public. So there will be 2 tables with the same name in the schema, but one will be temporary table and one will be permanent table. Let's order the with this. Okay, so even though in the show tables also only your temporary table is coming. So I did not observe this earlier, but here you can see. Okay, even in the show tables also only temporary is coming, permanent is not coming. So that means whenever you create a temporary table with the same name as permanent table, for that session only the temporary table will be active. Okay, so let's try to execute this. You are getting this data 1 2 3, and let's try to run the same command, okay, in the other worksheet, that means in the other session. Okay, so now it is fetching the data from the permanent tables, right? So in this, that means this temporary table is active only in the worksheet. In this worksheet, that means in that session only. When you try to execute the same command here in another session, what it is giving, it's fetching the data from permanent table. Even though my query is same, my database is same, my schema is same, my table name is also same, but it is fetching 2 different set of results because we have created a temporary table with same name as permanent table. You're understanding, right? So the queries are not complex, but you have to understand the concepts. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel.